Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today we have the brothers Gracchi. First, we're talking about Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. Interesting, fun series. New channel, extra history. It's basically we're unlocking more fun content. Glad you're here. We're not just gonna stare at this black screen forever. So make sure you hit that like button and let's jump right in. This is like a 6-part series. So this is part 1, how republics fall. Let's go.
The Republic is at a precipice. Elections are happening like nobody's ever seen. Demagogues preach the politics of violence in the streets. Vast amounts of foreign labor instill fear in the native workforce, and the rich sit simply consuming all they can.
What does that sound like? It sounds like the United States of America. Just kidding.
Blind to the poor masses that can only take so much before they break and overthrow them. All the while, the political elite is desperately trying to stop the very monster they created. But the political elite have gotten so stale, so tied to the interests of money, that they can't think to do anything but more of the same. The year is 121 BCE, and this is how republics fall.
Obviously, the Republic does not fall until Augustus, technically, but I'm guessing this is going to be a setup of like how it begins to fall.
But 121 BCE is a long way off yet, because to tell the tale of 121 BCE, we have to talk about the things that led up to it. To start with, we have to speak of the growth of Rome, for you would be hard-pressed to find a century more filled with war and expansion experienced by a single people. The 2nd century BCE was when the Roman Empire was won. From the dawn of the 2nd century to the 130s, the Romans smashed the Carthaginian Empire, taking back all of modern Spain and getting a foothold in North Africa. They fought the Macedonians and the Seleucids to attain total control of Greece.
Right, we just did the reactions on both of those things, the 2 Punic Wars and then the 3rd Punic War, which isn't really a 3rd Punic War. It was a massacre. It wasn't even really a war, even though it was long and lots of Romans did die. And then of course Greece, that was just a continuation of a combined city-state back and forth Aetolian and Achaean leagues versus Macedonia versus Seleucids, and just so much alliances and betrayals and alignment. And I'm so surprised that they already don't have Illyria at this point, but they have part of it.
They threw back the Gauls and the Ligurians, finally conquering all of northern Italy. They captured the eastern coast of the Adriatic.
Never mind. They did get that.
The Roman Republic more than doubled in size in a single generation. And all of this
a few generations.
Conquest was born on the backs of the veteran army, the citizen soldiers that fought the later Punic Wars. They conquered the globe for Rome, or at least what seemed like the globe to them.
Yeah.
But what was their reward? What happened to them when they returned home? To answer that, we have to answer another question. What came from all these wars? What happened to the defeated peoples? Well, they were made slaves and sold back in Roman markets, so Rome was now flooded with slaves. As tribe after tribe, country after country fell before the victorious Roman armies, tens if not hundreds of thousands of people were sent back to Italy in chains. And this changed the economy of all of Rome. Where once the engine of production had been the small landholder, the family that farmed their own land, now wealth, unimaginable wealth, started to coalesce. Vast estates were gathered, worked solely by slaves. This new, cheap foreign labor completely displaced the blue-collar working citizens of Rome. And as this new, cheap labor flooded in, those that could afford to buy that labor needed even more land to put it to work on.
And remember, these slaves will have children, and those children will become slaves, and those children will have children, and those children will have slaves. So it's a continuation of a classist society that is just driven off of who you are, where you came from, and why your status is what it is because of these wars. And there's not much opportunity for advancement. Some slaves might become free depending on who their master is, but at the end of the day, your likelihood of that is very slim. So it's detrimental, actually.
And how did they get that land? Well, remember that the Roman army had a property requirement to enlist. You had to be able to buy your own gear. Armor, helmet, shield, pilum, and gladius. These were all paid for by the soldier who carried them. It was a mark of pride amongst Romans to be of the class that could afford to join the army. You might not be super rich, but you were doing well enough to do your duty for the state. And for a long time, this worked, because most of Rome's wars were fought in Italy, only going abroad for brief campaigns, or in the most dire of emergencies like that death struggle with Carthage. But that was no longer the case. We look to that map and we see a long campaign in Spain and Greece. These just weren't 6-month local affairs anymore. And those that served were often called up time and again for the nearly continuous wars that Rome found itself in.
You see this in the Third Punic War. There's tons of soldiers towards the end of the few years of the campaign who are like, what are we doing? We've been here for years sieging Carthage. We've been here in Greece back and forth to put down the Macedonians or put down the Seleucids or the Achaean or the adversaries of Rome. And like you said, it's usually a lifetime of it depends on so many factors, but it seems like once you become within that military life, you're pretty structured to stay in that military life until death and like traumatic injury where you're not able to fight, or you are retired. And by the time you're retired, your life's pretty much in a different realm than it was when you started. Maybe for good, maybe for bad. As I know, there was a lot of, I'm not sure when this took place, probably in the later empire when this took place, but there was a lot of times where veterans would get cities or settlements after they retire. Like they would get land, and they would even there would be even full cities full of veterans, because these cities would be enacted to fulfill those promises. And sometimes land obviously took place of the pay that was promised.
But you can't leave a farm unattended for years on end. And as these citizen soldiers marched across faraway plains, their farms lay fallow. And so, as they were out serving Rome, they went bankrupt. And even those who still had something to come home to found that they couldn't compete against the vast slave farms, and soon sold to the owners of the much larger estates, and were turned off their lands to be replaced by foreign slaves. And so the farms of the rich who stayed in Rome grew and grew with every war. Never before had Rome seen such a disparity in income. I mean, Rome had never been a place of equality, but outside the city, what might be called the middle class had all but vanished. Smaller landholders began to trickle and then flood into Rome, looking for work, looking for a place where they might earn a living for themselves and for their families now that the trade they had always practiced was disappearing. But many of them never found work, or worked odd jobs that didn't fill their days. And this gave them time to sit and stew, time to be angry.
Time to revolt.
Time to be angry without even really being sure who they were angry at. Time to feel mistreated. And into this world, 2 boys are born.
The Gracchi.
One named Tiberius, one named Gaius. They were born plebeians, but of the most notable heritage. Their father had been a consul, and their mother was the daughter of Scipio Africanus.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I already know that Tiberius was in the Third Punic War. We saw him in that video we did a second ago. But okay, they definitely have like a foothold in the Roman world.
Yes, that one. Tiberius was the elder by 10 years, more even in temperament, more measured in speech. It's him we'll follow first. Tiberius was born in the 160s. His father was a celebrated man, twice consul, twice given a triumph, hailed for his moral fiber. But his father was old when Tiberius was born, and died when the boy was somewhere between 10 and 15 years of age. Tiberius was raised in the Roman arts, rhetoric, philosophy, religion, and of course war.
Which is a privilege at that time. And the liberal arts are only conserved to the elite, the upper class, and the fortunate.
As soon as he was able, he became a military tribune, the first rank on the Roman political ladder. and he shipped off to serve with his half-brother, the famed Scipio Aemilianus, in the final and utter destruction of Rome's ancient enemy, Carthage. And of all Romans, according to legend, he was the first over the wall of that great city when it fell. And through the campaign, he learned much from his half-brother, modeling himself after the great general. He was hailed for his courage and loved by the men. Upon his return to Rome, he was elected quaestor, that second rank of the cursus honorum, the political circuit of Rome. As quaestor, he was sent to serve in the Numantian Wars, the fight to pacify Hispania. But he had the misfortune to serve under Gaius Mancinus, who led the legions to defeat after defeat. All the while, Tiberius, a man of sober disposition, maintained his respect for the general and for the authority of command. Then, in the dead of night, after yet another defeat, the nerve of Gaius Mancinus broke, and he tried to have the army withdraw and abandon their camp. But the Numantians heard them, and were upon them like the wind. They were in the camp. They smashed through the rear guard, and drove the once proud legion onto impossible terrain. Mancinus, utterly defeated, sent envoys to treat for terms of surrender, but the envoys were rebuffed. The Numantians said they would speak to no man but Tiberius.
Why? Because of his lineage?
They had heard of him, and they respected him, but more than that, they remembered the deeds of his father.
That's why.
For his father, too, had fought in these lands.
And allied with these people, and then used that allyship to defeat Carthage in this area.
Winning great victories for Rome, and then always making sure that Rome abided by the terms of its peace. So, while Gaius cowered, Tiberius met the Numantians. By the negotiations' end, Tiberius had secured the lives of 20,000 Roman citizens and all of those that attended them from becoming slaves or slaughter. And so the defeated army marched back to Rome. But back at Rome, he met his first taste of ingratitude and the dangers of Roman politics. For many among the elite were crying that the campaign was a disgrace, that by signing the peace treaty they had made Rome look weak, look like a loser, that Tiberius had bought his own safety with dishonorable surrender. But here he also met with his first taste of populism, for the families of those who he had saved cheered him. And so when the vote came to decide the fate of Tiberius and all the officers of the expedition, the people voted to see him saved.
That's interesting because I would imagine that a lot of the people that are in Rome that are family members of the people in Iberia would not be of citizenship. And I'm wondering with like emancipation, like who is allowed to vote in Rome? That's a question I don't know the answer to.
Only Gaius Mancinus would be handed over to the Numantians, naked and in
Not emancipation. I said emancipation. Suffrage.
chains. And though this victory surely had also to do with the intercession of his all-powerful brother-in-law Scipio, Tiberius had learned the power of the people, a power he would soon put to use.
Whoa. What a fun little quick video. So Tiberius basically has connections, of course, to Scipio Africanus because that's his father, that actually plays in a very pragmatic way when they're in Iberia, and it looks like a weak it's like a 50-50. You to the aristocratic elite, Senate, maybe even, you're looked at as a loser, you're looked at as a failure. Well, it would have been much worse if homeboy is his upper commander was to, just be wiped out, and or they were to leave Iberia with their tail tucked between their legs. So interesting start to Tiberius's journey of being a quaestor from where he started. Of course, we have Gaius Gracchus as well. Yeah, fun little start of our little 6-part series. Make sure you subscribe, and we will attack the other 5. Appreciate you guys for being here. Until next time, peace out.